Welcome back, me again. Thanks for joining me in this second session of the Headless CMS. We're going to have a look at some simple and advanced features and use cases you can address with the Headless CMS to create classic, traditional, non-interactive digital signage or interactive digital signage using playlists, using variations. We're going to have a look at that. The idea is to really help you understand why a headless CMS can help you build these architecture, these bases, these playlists for your use cases, your needs, which might be different from another interface user's needs. So we're going to go crescendo and start with the simplest example of an image playlist. And let's start with the CMS itself. So in the structure, we're going to define what is a playlist to us. And I said it's the most simplest playlist, but I couldn't just put one image. I added a label because I want to have a little caption on top of my image, and also a duration because why should all images be equal? I may have some images which will be displayed just a few seconds and some will be displayed for a longer time. Don't look yet at the green bullets and the colors here. We'll come back to that. So this image playlist, let's look into the content. What we have 4 images, 4 labels, and then some durations, 5, 3, 10, and 10, which would be seconds in our case. Let's see in Composer how we build this very simple playlist. First of all, you need to add your base to your project. You need to choose a collection. I'm using a swap collection with a fade transition. In a collection, you will add your data feed. That's what comes from your CMS, the image playlist in this case, and then create a template. Because I need 2 assets, I need an image and a text asset to display the label, I need to put that inside a group. That creates this full screen image and then the label. Obviously, you could have that completely full screen. This is just for explanation. How do you make this a playlist that loops? Well, in this super simple example, the only thing you need to do is on the swap to activate the auto scroll. If you had the same duration for all your items, like 10 seconds for every images, you would put a 10 here, item display duration. That's defined at the collection level. Because we want it to be a bit more fancy here, I can go into the item itself, the root of the data template. That's the group in this case. Go into the behavior properties, uncheck this use collection display duration to make it unique, and then bind this display duration to my field that I defined in the base, the duration. So 5 seconds for the first one, for example. By doing this, we're going to go in play mode and see what it looks like. We created our image playlist with unique duration for every single image. So we have our first image displayed for 5 seconds, went fast. Second image for 3 seconds, then we go to 10 seconds, etc., etc. The swap is one of these collections that loops automatically. So after the item number 4, it will go back to number 1 and run indefinitely. This could be a corporate messaging or just an attract screen on a kiosk. Again, lots of different use cases for these playlists. If you wanted to create a video playlist, it's basically the same thing. So having a look at our base here, the main difference is that instead of having an image, we have a video, we have a label again. We don't need a duration. The composer would use the duration of the video file itself to decide when it needs to go from one item to the next one. So in Composer, it's going to be exactly the same thing. I'm skipping on that one. The next example is a bit more interesting. How to create a mixed media playlist. And I'm using an example here with images and videos. How to mix and match some, I want an image, I want a video, I want 2 images, etc. So the structure I created here is always a label. We have an image field if the media is an image. We have a video field if the media is a video. So you can see we have 2 images, 1 video, 1 image, 1 video. And then I added a field which I called media type, in which I use the basic text, image or video. This is going to help us in our template in Composer to decide what asset we need to show for this particular item in our data feed. I'm using images, videos. You could use PDFs, web browser, HTML, any assets that you have available in Composer. So let's switch back to edit mode and see how to build this mixed media playlist. So we're going to use a swap collection again. We still have a group as our root of the data template, and then we have both an image asset and a video asset, and we'll display one or the other depending on this media type additional field that we created in our structure. So if we look at this image asset, the image is obviously bound to the image source, but the visibility is bound to this media type, which is, remember, either the word image or the word video. This is not a true or false value. But we can use a converter on top of the binding. So I want actually this image asset to be visible if my input, my media type, is equal to, that's the converter I'm using here, to the word image. So if I have image in the base, this converter will return true. If I have something else like video, it will return false. As you can guess, we're doing the same thing on the video asset, except our converter is trying to compare the input, the media type, to the word video here. And that's why we'll have always one asset or the other, depending on what we entered in our base. To handle the playlist itself, the auto scroll here, we are kind of reaching its limit, so it's easier to handle that quote unquote manually using a countdown. So we can do, if an item is moved into focus and it's an image, we have this media type, so we know if it's going to be an image or video, we can use a countdown and could use the same duration for all images or unique durations as we did before. Again, it's pretty flexible. And then if we have a video, we can say, okay, let's automatically play the videos when they are moved into focus, and then when the video ends, we just do a next on our collection. That's about it. You have a mixed playlist of images and videos. So we saw this simple playlist where the content is going to be the same on all the players you have in the field, which might not be realistic depending on the size of your network. Let's have a look at variance, how to make this content change based on some criteria. The first one I want to talk about is the green one, the language, which I define here. And remember, you can create as many variants as you want in a given base. And for a variant language here, you can create as many variations, how many different values it will take in this space here. So right now, language, I set 2 values, 2 variations, English and French. And if we go back into our mixed media playlist, you can see the green bullet here is assigned to the label, meaning the label will change based on this variant. The media type will not change. An image is still an image, whether it's in English or in French. And in this case, I decided that the image or the video will not change based on the language. It could, especially if you have some audio. In the content side, in this playlist, when I select by default the English language, I do see my labels, which says EN. If I switch to French, we'll see the FR, again, demo content. So how do we use that in Composer? And then how do we say, this machine, I want it to run in French. This one, I want it to run in English. You have multiple options to do that. One could be to use the player tags, and we do have an article. If you search send content using player tags in the Help Center, you will find it, but that's only for our enterprise tier users. The technique I'm showing here is for all our users, leveraging the Headless CMS and creating an additional collection in my base just for that. So I created a settings group in which I have a collection, device settings. Assuming I want a different value, a different setting for each of my individual machines I will have in the field. If you have dozens, that's okay. If you have hundreds of thousands, maybe the tags will be a bit easier to use. So in this list, I have my device ID or device name, depending on what you want to use, and then a default value for the language, my variant number 1, and a default value for my location, which will be my second variant, the purple one. So my machine should be in French, located in Chicago. Jeff should be in English, located in Boston. That's what I have. Obviously, you can have as many as you want, and you can import that from Excel if you have a big amount of devices. Now, how do we make this work together? How do we mix the information from these device settings to my playlist and to decide on my base, do I want this language to be French or to be English? Because right now, if I set this to English and I publish and deploy, all the experiences will run in English, and that's not what I want. 2 steps. Step number 1, you need to know on which device you're running. So to do that, you can add the system info interface asset. It's off the shelf, it's available to everybody. Just add this to your experience. And as you look into the X-ray panel, you will see display name. You would not see Seb's demo player, you will see your device name. And that's the one I want to use as a dynamic value to decide, okay, should I put French or should I put English based on my settings? Once you have access to that info, then you need a trigger. When do you want to set that variant? When the experience is started, on the timer, lots of options. I like to use the sync completed. So when the experience has been launched, the headless CMS talk to the server and make sure, okay, we are in sync. Then I can start working with my content and deciding exactly what I want to display. So we need to do 2 things here. First of all, we need to know which settings do I need to use, Jeff's or Seb's. So my device settings, I'm going to filter them like as if they were an Excel file. I want to get the settings where the device ID or device name is equal to, I'm getting the info from my system info. That's why I need this in the experience. My device name. When I do that, I will get only 1 remaining settings, the correct one for this particular machine. When I have that, then I can say on my base, I want to set a variant and I want to set the language using the result of my filter. So I'm going back into my base among my settings. And right now I see 2 items, but remember we just applied a filter, so we'll have only 1 remaining item in here, which will be the one corresponding to the machine which is running. And I want to get its associated language. Done. So right now, by default, this experience is set to run in English. But if I hit play and I do nothing, I just let this trigger do its job, I get the label in French. I did that filter. That's Seb's machine. It should be in French. I set the language to French. There we go. All right, time is flying. Let's move on to the next examples because I know this one is going to interest a lot of you. That's about dates. How to say some content, let me go to the structure first, is valid this week or this month or just Monday or these kind of things. And I know we don't have a calendar, we don't have a timetable as other classic signage may have. You know, we come from the world of interactivity. For us, a playlist needs to be interrupted by a user putting his finger on the screen. Still, you can create this playlist, you can filter with dates, you can filter day parting, might be a bit more complex to do, but it's still doable. As I like to say with Interface, the question is not, can you do it with Interface? But it's how can you do it? And if you have some use cases that you can't manage to build with the Headless CMS, ask us. I'll say that again at the end of the session. So, playlist with dates. We have an image. Don't forget about this one. We have a label as well, still multi-language. And then I added a start date and an end date. I'm doing a simple timetable here where a media is scheduled between a start date and an end date. And these are using the date and time field, which is available here. If we look into the content, we still have some images, labels, and then we have things which were defined in March of this year, which are valid till next year. So this one will definitely be in the playlist, this one too. This one was set for just 1 day in April, like before today. So this one should disappear, etc. Let's see in Composer, how can you take advantage? How can you use these dates? And again, I'm using start date and end date here. It's not an off-the-shelf feature of a collection, but it takes just a few seconds to decide in your project, you need a start date and an end date. Just add them to your structure. It's that simple. So let's switch back in Composer and see the exact same list I have prepared. Now I'm not using a swap because I want you to see the list before and after. So this is a full list. Today, the day I'm recording this session is April the 22nd. Yeah, it's not Sunday right before the real session. And so we can see that the two first ones were set back in March till next year. So they're green. I'm comparing the dates with today from the clock. This one was set for just a single day, April the 13th. So this one should disappear, etc., etc. Now, how do you work with that list? Well, you do need to have the clock. The clock interface set will give you the date and the time of now. Then you need to apply a filter. Actually, let me go in play mode to demonstrate that. Okay, so by default, we didn't do anything on our list. We have all our items. We have 6 items to be displayed. Again, today is the 22nd. If I apply my filter, the filter is actually, I want to see all the media where the start date is lower than today and the end date is greater than today. So today is between start date and end date. I get just 3 items. I'm using a button here for demonstration purpose. As we did before, use the sync completed trigger on the base, use a timer trigger when the experience has been launched, or depending again on your scenario, your use case, if you need the content to be refreshed every hour, every half day, every week, we all have different needs. Set the triggers accordingly based on your needs. If you have content that changes every week, you don't need to change it every hour or to filter every hour to refresh that content. Now, if somebody wants to update the content and you want the experience to react to that, I could go back in the base and say, remember this one which was set for only 1 day? I'm actually going to change this, and this should go until end of May 2022. I can publish the content, do a publish here, go back into my composer. I'm going to clear the filters just so you see the difference. I'm going to sync the base. And you can see this one just changed and turned green. So now if I filter the date again, I'm getting 4 items to display instead of 3. Again, I use buttons here for demonstration purposes. Decide if you want to sync the base every day, every half day, every hour, depending on your needs regarding the update of the content. I know we'll have a lot of questions about this one, so let's keep them for the live Q&A and move on to the next example. Back to the base. Location variant examples. What if you have a network of dealerships and you want the opening hours, the title, the name of the director, phone number to be added to this database and to be displayed? I'm going to show 2 different examples. The first one is exactly the scenario I talked about. Let's imagine that you have a list of media, you have a playlist, back to a digital signage scenario, and you want location A has 1 playlist, location B has another playlist, and these 2 are completely separate. In this case, you can put the variant at the collection level. So you can see I put the purple here at the playlist per location, and these fields inherits from this variation. What does that mean in terms of content? If I look here at my playlist for Chicago, I do have 3 images which are trucks. That's for me. If I look at the Boston location, now I have 4 images which are cute animals. That's for Jeff. In Composer, actually, let me go back in edit mode. Again, you can choose what is the default value, and using the technique we used before, using the device settings or the player tags, decide, okay, this machine is associated to Chicago and should display the Chicago content. This one is associated to Boston. So if I go into my playlist per location and I look at my base, right now it's set to Chicago, I see the 3 tracks. If I switch to Boston, now I see the 4 cute animals. And by the way, the weather is changing at the same time, because I do have my weather bound to this variation location. So it's not only the base, you can combine this information, the device settings, to other interface assets, such as the weather, the Twitter, any web services that might bring in additional content for this particular location. So that's one way, and I'm going fast because I know I'm already out of time. The second way is, instead of having two completely different collections, the trucks and the animals, maybe you have one main collection, like the headquarters marketing content. And then you have some content that you want in some locations, but not in others. So a way to build that is, instead of putting a variant at the collection level itself, you can say, okay, I have one collection that will contain the whole amount of media, of images to put in that playlist. And then some of them will need to be shown at this location. So I'm using a Boolean here, a true or false value, that has the location variant. That's not very clear. So let's move into the content. If I look here at my, let me start with Boston. In the Boston location, I want to show all these 5 images in the playlist. Jeff gets it all because he needs to review the content. If I switch to the Chicago location, I don't want the cute animal. I just care about the trucks. So I will get only the 4 truck images and not the animals, because this is false. And I will use this field in a filter. So if we look into Composer, it's still the same kind of collections. And I'm just going to show what happens here. So we are on Boston. The green circles represent the true value. If I switch to Chicago, then I have a red value because this one is false. But as we did before with the dates, if we don't apply any filter, well, there are still 5 images in that collection, in that playlist. So we need to define what is our current location. Okay, we can see here in my settings, I'm in Chicago, and then I can apply my filter. And now we'll get only my 4 trucks with the labels in French because my device is set in French and we've added the trigger earlier. That concludes the session. I know I went very fast. I know you have a lot of questions about this. I hope it gave you ideas about what you can build with the Headless CMS and how flexible it is. Yes, we don't have timetables and day parting, the things that you can drag and drop in the Headless CMS, but that also gives you the flexibility to build just what you need for your use case or your customer's use case if you're an agency. Let's jump into the Q&A, and thanks again for being with us today.